Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the 7th round of Series 5 of the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series from the Suzuka circuit in the town of Suzuka in the Midway Prefecture in Japan. James Plank, the voice of Podium Esports, alongside Taylor Burris and our producer, as always, Power My Top Flight Computers, Ryan Bauer. Proud to bring you coverage of the first ever PCA sim racing event in an official series outside of the United States on the far eastern side of the globe. We visit Asia for the first time tonight, visit Japan for the first time tonight, at arguably the most famous of all of the continent's track, Suzuka circuit, which has many years of experience as a host of the Formula One Japanese Grand Prix, and also plenty of experience with GT racing as well, both in the standard international GT3, GT4, and GT1 forms, and with the domestic Super GT series that is popular throughout the country. Before we get going with tonight, we have a special interview courtesy of our friends at the Virtual Racing School. Plenty of fun that was had over the week between the PCA Sim Racing social media director Matt Mitchell and Virtual Racing School's Paschalis Girkis. So we'll turn it over to Matt and let you all find out a little bit more about VRS.
Hi, I'm Matt Mitchell. I'm the PCA Sim Racing social media coordinator, and I have Paschalis Kirkis with me. He's from Virtual Racing School, and I'd just like to ask you a couple of questions about VRS and what you're providing basically to the PCA. So to start us off, what is VRS?
Hi, Matt. Nice to meet you, and thank you guys for having me here. It's been a pleasure to be doing the data packs for the PCA series. Virtual Racing School is an e-learning platform, basically built for sim racers. We offer sim racing content, also called data packs. They always include driving data, setups, videos, and video tutorials. But mostly, and what is our focal point, is the software from VRS, which basically tracks the stats of your driving, and also there is a comprehensive driving analysis into the software itself. It is also good for PCA to get to know VRS through the data pack. Some might not be familiar with it, and it helps both the drivers and VRS to expand their user base towards a user base that is they're not hardcore sim racers, but as we know, the gap between real racing and sim racing becomes smaller and smaller, and that is basically an extra push to get started with sim racing in a very convenient and user-friendly platform.
You know, PCA Sim Racing is a natural test bed for setups on iRacing's Porsches, the Cayman, the 911 GT3 Cup, and the 911 RSR GTE. What have you learned from collecting data in PCA Sim Racing?
What I found useful with in PCA, and what kind of got me an extra step forward, is that I got to drive the car in some venues I wasn't very familiar with, and I had never driven the car at Circuit of the Americas or at Mosport. Having to apply it for a league like PCA is just an extra step forward.
Do you have any other sort of impacts that that PCA Sim Racing has had on VRS since our partnership began?
Yeah, I can actually speak from a personal note. I got to meet some drivers that actually race in the series, and they requested coaching. So I got to actually talk with them, get to know about all the different series, not series, but all the different classes that the series has, where from challenge up to the pro class. So I can actually get to learn the differences that are established there. Of course, having the coaching kind of gives the people an idea how we work from VRS, and it was not only one occasion I had. I have been also in contact. I have actually made friends from it.
What can VRS offer to the drivers of Porsches in iRacing, both to memberships and to non-members of PCA Sim Racing?
There's more than, if I had to count it right now, more than 8 series that you'll find like Porsche cars competing. I always like to mention, especially when I do coaching, that even though we have the setup, we are taking a lot of pride into the setup work that we put, but what we want to always pass to pass a message to our subscribers, to basically to showcase how important the software is and how important it is to actually make use of it, and how to determine and detect your driving habits that need fixing, and those things that you ultimately notice and apply to improve, that will become a lot more natural. And that's what's the goal of virtual racing school, is to basically make you a better driver, but also be able to improve on your own.
How can people interested in VRS find out more about the company?
Of course, heading into virtualracingschool.com, you'll find anything that you need, any subscription type that you may be interested. You will find the pricing model, and you will also find our hardware store that is now up. VRS is now providing a direct drive system that you can already reserve, and there is also a lot of plans in the future that I cannot disclose, that ultimately will make VRS the home not only for your software needs but also your hardware needs.
Well, thanks, Pascalis.
Thank you very much.
A tremendous thank you to Pasha and to Matt for their time. And of course, if you're interested in finding out even more about Virtual Racing School, head on over to virtualracingschool.com. You can see their address on your screens, and you can learn more about how they can help make you a faster driver, a better driver in the world of sim racing. We are at Suzuka Circuit tonight. Before we watch our 4 races this evening, we're going to get you acquainted with this very famous place. And for that, we turn now to Taylor Burris, who is going to bring us through our lap around Suzuka, a lap that was driven by the Chicago region's Trey Drawhorn here in the world of PCA sim racing, where the cars aren't real, but the racing is. To Taylor as he walks you through Trey's route.
Welcome to Suzuka International Racing Circuit. We're on board with Trey Drawhorn. As we are now crossing the start-finish line, to start your lap here, you're going to be heading down this long front straightaway, heading to the first corner at Suzuka. This corner is a double apex. You make sure you want to hit that first apex, then track out a little bit, setting up for that second apex. Once you're coming out of the first corner, you're going to make a large climb up the hill through Snake. This is a left-right S's where drivers will have to make sure they hit the apex and each corner as smooth as possible. Next up, you're going to be coming up towards the anti-bank curve. This corner can be a little bit interesting because you feel like you can take a little bit more speed into it, but very easily could lose control and lose through that corner. Up the hill, you continue as you come up to the Dunlop curve, a corner where it has a little bit of a double apex. You make sure to hit both apex to carry the speed as you're working down to the 2 Degner corners. Degner 1 is a little bit more of a high-speed corner where you can carry that momentum before having to drop it down to about 3rd gear to slow the car down. You're coming now through this short straightaway, heading up to the hairpin, one of the slowest corners on the circuit. Dropping it down to 2nd gear as you hit the brake marker, you're going to want to hug that inside line to help propel you off the hairpin. You're now heading down the 200R, this long corner pretty much as you set up to head down this corner. You want to make sure you try to hug it as best you can to set up for spoon curve. Another double apex corner. Watch your braking zone because it's very easy to overshoot this corner if you're not careful. Hug the first apex as you track out, coming out of the first apex. The second apex a little bit more trickier and tighter. As you try to do that, make sure you don't track out too far and hit the gravel. You're now heading down the back straightaway, the long stretch, where it's a great opportunity to utilize the slipstream around you to make passing opportunities. You're now approaching one of the famous corners here, the 130R, a high-speed, low-downforce corner where you can carry a ton of momentum to set up for another great passing opportunity, the Casio Triangle. This chicane is very tight, very easy to overshoot, and very easy where we can see a lot of action here. Hit the first apex and the second apex as you go down the hill through the last curve. As Trey Drawhorn comes to the line, he is going to be completing one of many in his 40-lap race here tonight at Suzuka, the land of the rising sun.
this is a special place for yours truly. This is my favorite track in all of the world, and a track that I would argue, and I think a lot of other people would as well, contains very solid examples of just about every single kind of corner you can find on a circuit. You need chicanes, S's, double apex corners, fast corners, long straight, short straight. Suzuka has it all. It is a complete test for the driver. We'll see who conquers it best over the course of the evening as we take you to the starting grid for this challenge class race, which is presented by Haggerty. Let's drive together. Ian Simon, your points leader, takes the top time in qualifying with a 2:11.250. Ed Eisenring will start from second. Daniel Rubel begins tonight's race from third. Fourth will be the 7:75 of Chris Siborowski. Ken Tubman won at Mosport earlier in the year. He'll start from fifth. Sixth will be Robert Rose. Ken Nielsen starts this evening's race from seventh. Eighth will be J.R. Gregory. John Crook begins tonight from ninth. And Scott Farish starts in 10th. Aaron Ambrosino begins this evening from 11th. 12th is the 20 of the Trip Starkey. Andrew Hillman will begin tonight from 13th. 14th on the grid is Justin Moreno of Team Haggerty. Jason Sherwood starts tonight from 15th. 16th will be the 5 of Alan Kirby. Kim Frick begins tonight's race from 17th. 18th on the grid is where you'll find Mark Granoff. David Purdy and Anchor Bergson complete the top 20 on the grid. 21st is Robert Benson. Abraham Jones starts 22nd. In the 23rd place in the grid is Jeff McClure. Starting in 24th will be Olin Murphy. Adam Fox begins this evening from 25th. In 26th, it'll be John Bradley. Andrew McCune will start 27th. 28th, 29th, 30th. Final 3 cars in the grid: David Barber, Scott McSherry, and Jose Rivas. We take you now to track facts for the first time here at Suzuka Circuit. We're on the Grand Prix layout, the full layout that's been used for years by Formula One. It's a 3.609 mile, 5.807 kilometer circuit with 11 turns officially in Wikipedia's eyes, and in the iRacing guys, 18 turns if you count every single last nook and cranny here, but we'll keep our eyes peeled as drivers will tackle weather of 65 degrees Fahrenheit air temp, 66 degrees Fahrenheit track temp, winds to the south at 7 miles an hour as there's an incident behind in the chicane before we even get going. Chris Siborowski gets turned around, and I suspect that we may end up holding the start here to make sure that we're in good shape. This is an interesting one, to say the least. Adventures before we even get going, and it certainly wasn't any form of intentional, but damage to Ken Nielsen's machine. But as we were talking about, we're going to go for 30 minutes here as the green flag comes out. It stacks everybody up, and we'll see how these drivers tackle the partly cloudy skies and sunrise in the land of the rising sun. It's just after 6 a.m. local time as we are underway here after a very chaotic start, to say the least. But Ian Simon and Ed Eisenring take off and lead the field through the first set of corners for this first lap at Suzuka. 30 minutes in this race, 40 minutes in our other 3 races this evening. But off we go in Asia for the first time in PCA sim racing, Taylor.
Yes, indeed, as they climb up through the S's for the first time, heading to the anti-bank curve. It is still going to be Daniel Rubel, though, who picked up the 3rd position as they climb up the Dunlop curve. But still, Simon and Eisenring are pulling away by about, a 1.92-second gap over Daniel Rubel. Meanwhile, the rest of the field starting to get a little bit separated as we see the closest battle has to be for 4th position. Robert Rose holding off J.R. Gregory and Ken Tubman.
Really good stuff. Just a little bit further back, J.R. Gregory leading that pack as Eisenring has already fallen behind Simon by about a half second. Rubel's got the clearance and Rose there in 4th. Siborowski was scheduled to start in the 4th position, but got turned before we even got to the beginning of the race, and that stacked up everybody else behind him. One of the wilder incidents we've seen in PCA sim racing at the very beginning. So he tried to climb his way back up through, but it was incidental contact with Ken Tubman, who I presume will probably get some form of penalty for what I guess ultimately would be an orange zone violation. But by no means was it intentional, but it's just with the chicanes here, it's so easy under pace lap if you're going double file to take each other out like that.
It is. It's a very tight chicane. It's even difficult at race pace to make a pass through there, let alone go 2x2 under caution at the start of the race here at Suzuka. So Chris Sidorowski has just got around the 5 of Alan Kirby for the 14th position as they now head to the 130 yards, heading to complete lap number 1 of 14 after 30 minutes here at Suzuka.
Riding on board there, trying to see what they can do just a little bit further back in all of this. Is we see some cars missing the chicane for the first time, a few others trying to piece their way around this track for the first time. It's not an easy place, but Ian Simon has the lead. The interesting thing, though, is that Ed Eisenring was able to claw his way back into this down that straightaway, and he's got a good run on your race leader. You ride on board with the driver from Washington State, Eisenring and the Martini Kellers, and Daniel Rubel, who had speed 2 weeks ago at Circuit of the Americas. Those three make a nice train at the front of this field.
They certainly have, as they have pulled away from the rest of the field by about 4 seconds before they catch up to Robert Rose, who's way back there trying to hold off J.R. Gregory. But a great top 3 battling it out as they come up the hill over through the Dunlop curve. Eisenring having a great job as well, keeping Rubel behind him. And all 3 of these drivers are in the battle for the points championship, and with only one more race after this race here tonight, anything is possible.
Indeed, a lot is possible with these drivers, and it is relatively tight between this bunch. Ian Simon comes into this race with over a 100-point lead on Justin Moreno, who's second in points, but Eisenring in the top 10 in points, trying to put together a good run, and Daniel Rubel also climbing through the standings. He up to 5th rather, the point standings entering this evening.
Looking through the field right now as we see our top 3 have pulled away pretty much from the rest of the field. Another good battle would have to be between Ken Tubman and Ken Nielsen for 6th and 7th. They're now heading up towards Spoon, just in front of J.R. Gregory now as they hit the first apex of Spoon. They're still keeping a tight battle as Tubman looks to the inside of Gregory but can't quite stick his nose under there yet. Plus, also have to keep in mind he may have a penalty to serve, so he's trying to see if he can gain as much time as possible so he doesn't lose as much positions when he has to come down pit road, if that were to happen.
If that were to happen, that I think is the biggest question that you have to keep your eyes peeled on. As we get a good look at some of the big shots here of Suzuka, this through the rolling hills of Japan. We're not terribly far away from Osaka, if you would believe, just a little bit to the northwest from one of Japan's largest cities. And history here abound. We mentioned it at the very top of the broadcast, but for a non-European circuit, this is arguably one of the most historic out there on the planet. There's so many stories to be told, and this is a track that is already over 60 years old, Ted.
It is. I mean, who can forget especially the great Formula One eras where we've seen so many amazing Formula One races held here. And then, of course, you have sports car racing that happens here on a regular basis. Unfortunately, with COVID-19 here in 2020, they normally run the Suzuka 1000 or the 10 Hours of Suzuka, which is a phenomenal GT sports car endurance race.
So many supremely wonderful places that you can watch a race from here too. So many different shots that you can get. As you look at some of our cars working their way past 130R, that famous sweeping left-hander that takes you down into the chicane. And so many things that you can see about a race on this circuit. This is your lead route coming into the hairpin as Eisenring looks to make the move, but nothing at this time yet, Taylor. They're just sort of hanging tight.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's really putting the pressure. There's a couple of people who are trying to make positions and make time, but everybody's pretty much, for the most part, staying single file. The closest side-by-side battle would have to be between Scott or Andrew Hillman and Aaron Ambrosino as they try to go side-by-side out of the hairpin, but decided to go back single file. So no major battles here in the top 20 right now as we are still early on at Suzuka.
Very early on, and now Rubel is going to set the charge to Eisenring, who has been giving some trouble to Ian Simon and at least keeping him honest, but Rubel even closer to Eisenring than Eisenring is to Simon, and you see the rear end of the 929 step out ever so slightly. It's not enough, but enough to where you can tell he's pushing it, or maybe gets pushed, as Daniel Rubel will get into the back of Eisenring going into the chicane, send Eisenring around, and I imagine that's going to be a penalty for Rubel as Eisenring gets turned again and ends up making more contact further back in the chicane. He clipped, I believe, believe it was the Robert Rose machine, the 443 who went around and all that.
It was indeed. He just was not paying attention to his surroundings. More cars get involved with that as well. That looks like John Croak, Ken Nielsen, Ken Tubman. So a lot of heavy playoff or championship contenders here involved in that wreck, as some drivers are now working their way up into the top 5 who have yet had a top 5 run here.
Trip Starkey putting together a really solid run. Eisenring is only back to 5th after all of that, but I think the net result of that is that Daniel Rubel will lose the time and then lose the spot too. He will likely come down pit road for a penalty. J.R. Gregory then would assume second. He's about 7 seconds back of the leader. Then you turn your attention to Starkey, who's about 12 seconds back. And then the next man who came out of that without any damage, I believe, was Aaron Ambrosino in the 9 car.
Yeah, he's sitting actually in 9th place as they're coming up to Degner 1, and he's got about 4 cars in front of him as he is trying to get around them. He has a little bit of pressure from the 61 of John Croak right now as they come out of Degner 2 heading towards the hairpin. So we'll have to see how that battle works out for these two drivers as they approach the hairpin. John Croak looks to the inside, can't quite make it work as he will then go a little bit too wide to the hairpin and continue on his way. Gets a little loose actually.
Got very, very loose indeed as she look off the back, see these two beginning to find where their battle is going to be. You look at Scott Ferris's machine running in the 8th spot here, trying to keep Ambrosino at bay, but nothing yet as he snuck ahead of that number 9 machine and has the 8th spot already.
Scott Ferris doing a great job in that 027 Porsche as they go down the back straightaway, heading up to the 130R. A couple of cars trying to take a look around to maybe battle. That's going to be Ken Tubman getting around Ed Eisenring as he will complete the pass. It has 1 less mirror than he had when he started this race, but will continue to do battle as he moves up into the top 5 here tonight.
Indeed, into the top 5 a little bit later as we see a lot of cars begin to struggle their way around this course. And already, I think, is starting to take a toll on some of the more aggressive drivers as Rubel and Eisenring are both going to come down pit road to serve their penalties. Rubel for the initial contact and then Eisenring for the unsafe entry that caught up Robert Rose and Ken Tubman and company. So that does clear out everything as Ferris is able to clear Siborowski, who after all of that ended up gaining a lot of the spots that he lost. Remember when Tubman spun him around on that initial pace lap before we even got the green. Siborowski, who was scheduled to start 4th, ended up actually starting about 16th or so when they crossed the line, and he's already back up to 6th.
Yeah, so a great effort right now for Chris Siborowski as he is trying to get around Scott Ferris to get back into the top 5. They're now coming up to the anti-bank curve as they work their way up through there, now climbing up the Dunlop curve. Siborowski just poking and prodding, trying to find an opportunity to get around Scott Ferris, who gets a little loose off the corner exit of the Dunlop, but they're going to go side by side down straight. Chris Siborowski breaks the top 5.
Chris Siborowski continuing to charge through the field again. This is much like, I forget if it was Road America or Watkins Glen, but remember he made this charge, I think it was last week, where he ran into early trouble and then came back up through the field. Just see, it feels like deja vu in a sense, but this time I think it's going a little bit better. I actually think it might have been Cota, but in either case, it's not the first time Siborowski's had to deal with something like this. I think it was Cota where he was turned at the top of the hill on the opening lap and then had to come through the field to get a good finish. It's the same thing all over again here.
It certainly is for him. I mean, he's definitely one of those drivers who has strong runs, but for some reason always ends up getting some sort of bad luck at races here. And right now he's trying to turn it around to get some good luck, especially with Siborowski, who's sitting 6th in the points right now. If he is able to play his cards right, he could possibly come home with a good finish and maybe come within striking distance of winning this championship here for the challenge class.
Potentially, we look at Siborowski and Scott Ferris. It's your first good battle towards the front. Everybody else above these drivers separated by at least a second or so. But as we continue through our first race of the evening here in PCA Sim Racing Series 5, 7th round at Suzuka Circuit, I'll remind you all that setups for Series 5 are brought to you by our friends at the Virtual Racing School. And for more information and more on how you become a faster driver in the sim racing world, log on to www.virtualracingschool.com. It is Siborowski charging, but it is Ian Simon with this iron grip on the lead that he has had in the second half of this season in particular. He has been unchallenged. Win tonight would make it 4 out of the last 5 and 6 out of, well, 5 rather, out of 7 races complete. I'll check my math there on a little bit, but when you take out the second race of the year at Mosport where he got into trouble, he's finished first or second in every single race. This is a driver who we're probably not going to see in the challenge class for Series 6, I would think, Taylor.
I don't think so. He'll probably be going up to the next class up, if not maybe even a little further up. He may be leapfrogging and go all the way up to club just by how competitive he is, Ian Simon is. So keep an eye and see what Season 6 might bring for Ian Simon to see what he can accomplish in the future.
Ian Simon can absolutely put together a tremendous amount of work, and I have a feeling that we're going to be very, very eyes up on Simon and what he pulls off over the course of the next week or so. But Simon with plenty of room to jump around, as Jose Rivas has been black flagged here and put in trouble, but we'll see how it goes.
I wonder what happened with Jose Rivas.
Jose Rivas in trouble, but looking through the field, best battles here. You've seen Ambrosino and Andrew Hillman and company. Kim Frick, Abraham Jones and company. Frick's got a very dinged up front end. The car almost looks maybe not quite like a Porsche over the way he fitted up, but it's a good group here. Him and Abraham Jones and Jose Rivas, as well as Frick, I think, got himself in trouble. Got the grass going into 130R and ends up in the sand and in the beach a bit, so he'll slide back and that'll allow Daniel Rubel, of all people, to slide on up the field just a bit.
As he tries to recover from his penalty, Daniel Rubel will see what he can do as the time continues to wind down. But for Kim Frick, that Porsche is definitely going to need to come down pit road for some repairs, as he will make the hard right turn down pit road to get repairs.
So he makes the turn down pit road to get fixed up, and everybody else will carry on. There's Gregory, Starkey, Ferris, Ambrosino, and then Rubel and Purdy. Now a good battle as well, and Abraham Jones in the mix too. This is 12, 13, and 14 that we keep our eyes peeled on at this time.
A very good run right now for David Purdy. I mean, that driver started in the 19th position, has gained all the way up to 13th. Same thing with Abraham Jones, who started in 22nd. After this big contact between Daniel Rubel, and looked like also who makes more contact with David Purdy, but Abraham Jones as well made contact with that situation. So big issue up through the Dunlop curve.
Big issue indeed through the Dunlop curve for Abraham Jones, who I couldn't tell if he just went sideways up his own accord. That's what it looked like at first glance. But he slides around. He goes out of the way. Jason Sherwood with damage. A lot of cars back here with damage. Mark Grandoff in 14th, I think, is the only one within this group of about 5 or 6 that is clean before you get to Anker Bergson. So Suzuka very early on providing a challenging test to these drivers.
Looking more like a short track for these drivers here compared to an actual twists and turns on a road course. It's definitely been very challenging for our challenge class here.
And it is now time for our Midway race break, which is brought to you for the challenge class by Hagerty. Since 1984, Hagerty has been the worldwide leader in collector car insurance. Everything they do is geared toward enabling and enhancing the experience of automotive enthusiasts and making sure that the vehicles we all love and the lifestyles that revolve around them don't just survive but thrive well into the future. Services include the Hagerty Drivers Club, Drive Share by Hagerty, the shop, and much, much more to fuel car culture. Hagerty, let's drive together. You know who's leading this race already. It's the same man who's been in front for most of the challenge class season. It's Ian Simon on point. J.R. Gregory with the season's best run of second at this time out of the Oregon region that covers the greater Portland area. Really good run for him. Same for Trip Starkey out of the Rocky Mountain region that covers Denver, Cheyenne, Fort Collins, eastern Nebraska. Really solid work for Starkey to run P3. Fourth is Ken Tubman, who comes out of the Lone Star region of Texas that covers Houston, College Station, and much of the southeastern portion of the state. He won at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in the second race of the season. Chris Siborowski with another solid charge out of the San Diego region, again climbing through the field. Currently scored in the fourth spot with the quick lap times, too. Fifth is John Crook out of the Potomac region, Washington, D.C., which claimed its first pro checkered flag last week, courtesy of Joshua Vieira. You'll see him run a little bit later. John Crook running in sixth. Scott Ferris in the seventh spot. Another one of the Oregon region drivers. Oregon having a really strong showing in this race. Eighth is where you'll find Aaron Ambrosino out of the Hudson Champlain region. New York State is where he calls home. Ninth belongs to the Sundsland region of Andrew Hilleman. That's one of the better names, to be fair, of any PCA region. And if you need to find out where that is, Central Iowa, the state capital Des Moines. That's where he's got. Robert Rose out of the Shenandoah region is the final driver in the top 10, covering Charlottesville and stretches west along I-81. The Shenandoah Valley of Virginia is where you'll find him.
In the 11th position, you'll find Anker Bergson, who is from the Northeast region, having a great run here tonight. His best finish, though, this season was over at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. If you go a little further back, in 12th position, you'll find Kenneth Nielsen from the Pacific Northwest region, having a great run here tonight. His best run was at race number 3. Daniel Rubel, who is struggling here with many issues tonight, currently sitting 5th in the points, 13th overall right now. You can find him in the Rhinestone region. Next up, you will find Mark Granoff from the Lone Star region, running in the 14th position, sitting 20th in the point standings. Jason Sherwood from the 99 Porsche, sitting 15th from the Diablo region, sitting 21st in the points. David Purdy had a strong run, was up inside the top 10 till he ran into some incidents. He is sitting in 16th. Ed Eisenring from the Pacific Northwest region sits in 17th, followed by the 74 of Jeff McClure in 18th. Scott McSherry from the Eastern Buckeye region. He sits 12th in the points and sits 19th out there on the circuit. Rounding out your top 20 is John Bradley in that number 10 Porsche.
21st belongs to, at this time, John Bradley in the 10 car now has a revanche up to 21st. Out of the Total region, Philadelphia area. 22nd in this race is Abraham Jones, Allegheny region, Pittsburgh, so Pennsylvania well represented in 21st and at 22nd. Robert Benson out of the Rensport region holds the 23rd spot. That's up in Quebec. 24th in tonight's race. Justin Moreno, part of Team Haggerty out of the Western Michigan region of the PCA. And 25th at this time is Kim Frick, the Niagara region, covering the Buffalo area, where you'll find him. Adam Fox holds the 26th position out of the Metropolitan New York region, New York City. Plenty of interest there across the board. 27 is the 55 of Andrew McCune, another Rocky Mountain driver. They've had strong representation throughout PCA Sim Racing over the years. David Barber out of the Pacific Northwest region that covers all of the Seattle area holds 28. Alan Kirby is off track in 29th, and 30th is Olin Murphy out of the Palmetto region of the PCA. And that concludes tonight's Haggerty Midway race break for this particular challenge class race. Haggerty, let's drive together. We'll also remind you that coverage of PCA Sim Racing is brought to you by the Z1 Dashboard, the racing analytics application that shows everything about where your positional track is, where your competitors are, and where you'll be at your pit stops. The Z1 Dashboard can also tell you when you should pit, how much fuel you should take, what the weather is like on the racetrack. You can sign up to 10 different dashboards to each car and switch between them with the click of a button, so the required information is always at your fingertips. The latest version has just been released. It includes even more dashboards and the ability to use your mobile device as a display. For more information about the Z1 Dashboard, visit www.z1dashboard.com. The Z1 Dashboard is offering a free sim racing software package to one PCA Sim Racing EDE student each and every Friday. Tonight's winner from the Shenandoah region in this PCA Challenge Class race, Robert Rose, who currently runs in the 10th position. PCA Sim Racing EDE program provides free entry-level training to the most advanced sim racing coaching out there. You can sign up for the EDE program at PCASimRacing.com/EDE to win this next software package. One more software package up for grabs in the fall. We have our season finale next Friday night at Daytona.
So from your favorite track in the world to probably my favorite track in the world next week at Daytona International Speedway. But meanwhile, here back at Suzuka, we have a great battle for second place. J.R. Gregory, Trip Starkey, Ken Tubman battling it out. And if for those of you who might have missed it, Ken Tubman's definitely putting the pressure on Trip Starkey. He tried to just dive it in there into the spoon curve, but couldn't make it work. He actually overshot it, went off course, and lost that position to Trip Starkey. But these three cars are battling it out to the bitter end here with about 7.5 minutes left, or about 4 laps to go here.
Really good stuff. Second, third, fourth on top of each other entirely. And you can't count out Chris Siborowski, who I think would be the candidate for drive of the day in this particular race after the way he started tonight's race, where he was sideways. He was around in the chicane before we even got the green flag. Started in 16th after qualifying 4th. He's already back up to P5.
And he wants more. He wants to at least try to finish where he started, as he is about 1.1 seconds back from Ken Tubman right now, who is putting the pressure on Trip Starkey as they climb up through the snake to the top of the hill, and both of them hitting their apexes perfectly to try to carry as much momentum as they work around a little bit of lap traffic in front of J.R. Gregory as they come up to the anti-bank curve and set up for the Dunlop curve just up ahead.
Really tricky. This is almost like a double apex section here coming out of the SS. It's not quite as obvious as the spoon section, which is the more famous version of it, but it definitely is not a dead-on straight curve and can be more difficult than advertised in that sense. Same thing here as they hit through the Dinger curves. The first is a little bit tricky, but the second, you really have to watch the brakes because you head downhill, and it's very easy to lock up the brakes through the middle of that apex and end up looping yourself around.
It is, and it's very easy because also when you're coming up through the hairpin right here, you feel like you can carry a lot more speed, but you have to, as soon as you pretty much go full throttle, you have to get back onto the brakes to be able to make the corner of the hairpin as they're now coming down the 220. And it's still definitely an opportunity for Ken Tubman. Is he going to try and overshoot this corner to make the pass on Trip Starkey? He's not close enough to make it work. But I tell you what, the last time he tried to pull that move, he was at least a good 3 or 4 car lengths back when he tried to make that pass. So definitely trying to be a little bit brave here late in the going at Suzuka.
Really tight stuff and good stuff here. It's not something I think we expected. It looked like this was going to be a race where you saw so many drivers struggle to fight this track. It feels like a week where you're going to be racing the track more than you are the other drivers, but those at the front have put it together and really do have a good handle on things. The Scott Ferris, Aaron Ambrosino battle in 6th and 7th has not quelled either. That one's still very tight within 0.3 of a second for position. And Jason Sherwood and Ed Eisenring having a good battle back in 15th and 16th, although Sherwood struggling a little bit with the damage on his car, so Eisenring going to clear and I think make quick work of the 99 machine as he does get around Eisenring at the hairpin and take over the 15th position.
Yeah, Jason Sherwood, that Porsche is definitely torn up quite a bit, especially in the rear. He lost his spoiler, lost his window, and it's got a little bit of bent up quarter panel as they are working through Spoon Curve. So he's going to be fortunate to try to come home with a top 20 finish after starting 15th here tonight.
It will be very tough, but maybe a good learning lesson here heading to Daytona, which is a similar kind of challenge that you're going to see this in the season as Ian Simon continues to lead this group, and you see a few more beautiful shots here of Suzuka. This battle coming in for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, everybody in a line there coming through Dinger curve, and some of the great shots by our cameraman and producer Ryan Bauer. You see just how athletic these cars have to be to get around this place, and a good shot here coming up into the hairpin that just makes it very clear how tricky this corner is and how tight it is.
It is very tight. I mean, these cars are struggling to get the grip they need in order to get the momentum and speed off corner exit. So they're doing a great job of hugging that inside apex and then propelling themselves when they track out of the hairpin down this straightaway here. As they now approach Spoon, we'll see what J.R. Gregory can do. Can he continue to hold off Trip Starkey and Ken Tubman? Chris Siborowski probably in the catbird seat. If any one of those three drivers in front of him makes a mistake, he could be there to capitalize and even have a shot of either getting back inside the top four or a podium finish here tonight at Suzuka as they go down the back straightaway heading towards the 130R. It is going to be a tight battle. Let's see if Tubman will take a peek to the inside. He will, but can't quite get close enough to make the pass.
So Tubman will try and fight it. That might actually open up the opportunity for Siborowski, who thought about peeking to his inside of the chicane, but given how much we've seen trouble in this chicane, I'm surprised that he decides to back off. So it's J.R. Gregory still in control of second, then Starkey, then Tubman, then Siborowski as they complete their laps around Suzuka and continue to work their way around this place with maybe just a handful of laps left to go.
Looking at timing and scoring, it looks about 2 laps to go here at Suzuka as they are working through the first curve here, coming up towards the Snake. And it's still going to be J.R. Gregory holding strong over Trip Starkey. Ken Tubman's fallen back by about 3 car lengths from Starkey as they're climbing up through the S's, working their way up to Dunlop curve. Siborowski watching and waiting for an opportune time to make an attack.
Keeping our eyes peeled here, you ride on board with this group, see where they pack out. Aaron Ambrosino has slid back from Scott Ferris, and John Crook is now challenging for the 8th spot. But we'll keep our eyes here on this battle for second. You look and see that battle very briefly before we return to P2 and take our look here at Gregory, Starkey, and Tubman and Siborowski. As Starkey went wide just a bit, but then Tubman caught the apron. So now what does Siborowski do, as he might have the opportunity to get alongside Tubman here in the hairpin, but thinks better of it and backs out.
He's going to try to go the long way around through the hairpin, but then decides to dive it down to hit the apex. As they work out of the hairpin, he will be able to gain a little bit of ground on Ken Tubman, as we saw in front. J.R. Gregory make a mistake as well, which was able to recover to keep Trip Starkey back behind him in third.
Trip Starkey carries on. Ian Simon holding off everyone, and he's got 20 seconds to the good in all of this. Is Siborowski now trying to really force the issue on Tubman, who did not get a good run through Spoon. Gregory now beginning to gap Starkey ever so slightly, as this should be the white flag for Ian Simon and everybody in this field.
One more lap for these drivers, one opportunity to make it count for them at one of these corners. They're now approaching the Casio Triangle once again. Will we see a driver decide to be brave and make the decision to make a pass? Not this time around. They will go through the Casio Triangle, no problems, as we see Ken Tubman go a little bit wide through the last curve as they go down the start-finish line to start their final lap.
Simon is in a world all unto himself, but Gregory and Starkey are all over each other. And there goes Siborowski just behind this group, looking to the inside, and he forced it in there. Shades of Senna and Prost from way, way back in 1989 or 90, I believe, one of the two. But my goodness, he went for it and it did not pay off, and Trip Starkey will pay the price and end up sliding back behind this entire group and end up going to 5th as Gregory maintains second, and now Ken Tubman and Chris Siborowski might be in for the fight.
They are. They have caught to the back bumper of J.R. Gregory as they go up through the Dunlop curve. Gregory trying everything to hold off Tubman, both of these drivers have a little bit of damage from previous incidents. Of course, Gregory now from that incident that he had with Trip Starkey. Through Degner 1, lap traffic in front of them. Who will make the decision to make the pass work? Degner 2, they'll come out. They get around the lap traffic possibly before they get to the hairpin.
You see J.R. Gregory threw the lights on immediately, and the lap car there of John Bradley gets out of the way to make sure he is not part of the issue. Meanwhile, Ian Simon coming through Spoon and working his way up the backstretch to 130R for the last time.
Still watching this battle here as they go down this straightaway, heading to Spoon for the final time. When we see Tubman try and just outbrake J.R. Gregory. Here they come up to Spoon. Gregory is able to hold off Tubman through the first apex, climbing up track out.
Holds him up through the first, holds him up through the second. Meanwhile, Ian Simon has arrived at the chicane and comes through this corner, and the impressive season continues in Japan for Ian Simon, who will come across the line to win round 7 and pick up his 4th win in the last 5 races and 5th win of Series 5. Ian Simon, your winner of the challenge class for round 7, presented by Haggerty. And contact over in the chicane between J.R. Gregory and Ted Tubman.
As we go, Chris Siborowski's trail trying to find door banging between him and Tubman as they go out of the last curve. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a penalty possibly involved for that one with the contact on the final lap, but Gregory will hold on for second.
After all of that madness, Gregory was the one who went sideways and just about lost it over in the chicane after he got a bunt from Tubman. But in the end, it was indeed J.R. Gregory who managed to hold off and get P2 ahead of Tubman and Siborowski.
Great drive for J.R. Gregory, who was able to do that. That will be a big help for him in the point standings here tonight, as he currently sits 22nd. So this is his best finish of all this season.
Really good work from J.R. Gregory to get it done at Suzuka. As we wait for the rest of the field to complete lap. Scott McSherry is the last car in the lead lap in 17th. He just came out of the hairpin, so he'll be the last one to finish tonight's race. Everybody else will be wrapped up in some form. And not too many battles to tell you about. Daniel Rubel, Martin Granoff having a good tussle, but Rubel's going to take that battle for 13th. And Eisenring going to beat Jason Sherwood out by a significant margin, as Sherwood, Rivas, and McSherry well towards the back and well towards the back end of the lead lap here. Is McSherry now coming down the back straightaway for the final time. You look at Jason Sherwood, and a man who soldiered on through this race, sans a rear wing, but still with a solid run, ends up coming home 15th at the end of all of this. And then Rivas also working his way through the chicane in the flying lizard colors. Not necessarily a lizard up at the front, but you see that livery, you know what you're dealing with. It's a point that we made on multiple broadcasts this year with PCA Sim Racing. But Jose Rivas to come across the line in 16th, Scott McSherry to finish off in 17th and wrap up tonight's race. And it's time to bring you the full field rundown to tell you where your favorite driver finished. Ian Simon, your race winner ahead of Ken Tubman. Chris Siborowski finished in 3rd. Chip Starkey was 4th this evening. 5th went to Scott Ferris. 6th place was Aaron Ambrosino. Andrew Hillman was 7th. Robert Rose, your giveaway winner, finished in the 8th spot. 9th was Inker Bergstone. Completing the top 10 was the 42 of Ken Nielsen.
John Croak will come home in 11th position, followed by J.R. Gregory in 12th position. Daniel Rubel will be coming home in the 13th position, followed by Mark Granoff in 14th. 15th goes to Ed Eisenring, followed by Jason Sherwood in 16th. 17th goes to Jose Rivas. 18th, the last car on the lead lap, Scott McSherry. First car 1 lap down, David Purdy in 19th. Robert Benson rounds out your top 20.
21st this evening was Justin Moreno of Team Haggerty. Abraham Jones was 22nd. 23rd was Jeff McClure. John Bradley finished in 24th. 25th went to Kim Frick. Adam Fox was 26th. 27th was Andrew McCune. David Barber 28th. 29th, Alan Kirby. Olin Murphy out of the Palmetto region completes this race. And does this get easier as this comes on? Do we need to worry about you going straight to Pro from Challenge next year? Maybe that's a better question here, because that just about virtually locks up the title for you if you can put together a good start next week at Daytona. So for Series 6, what sort of goals do you have, and what expectations do you set upon yourself after your strong start to PCA Sim Racing in Series 5?
Well, like I guess that I don't know that it gets easier, but you definitely get a little bit more of a feel for this car. It's a little hard to drive at first, for sure. So that's the biggest thing, I think, just getting used to the car. And after that, if it's tracks that you know somewhat, it's just going to come to you. So, again, I think a bit of a luck up maybe tonight. It looks like Dan and Ed were both going to be pretty quick. I don't know what happened. I just saw them both go off on my mirror, so I don't know what happened there, but I think it could have been a very tight race there.
Could have been tricky, could have been tight, but again, how about 5 wins on this season now? and 4 of those coming in the last 5 races, and only 1 finish outside of first or second. It's not quite William Levesque dominance out of season 2, but certainly a lot of pride with all that. I think the bigger question now becomes, we look at the GTE and then the Cup car, looking ahead to Series 6. Do you feel like the skills from the Cayman translate well to those 2 cars?
Probably not so much. A lot more aero in those, so it'll be a different style, I'm sure. I haven't driven either of them a whole lot, so we're already in talks about what we're going to do for our next Q Cup season, though, to start practicing for it. So we'll definitely get a lot of practice in with the car before next season.
Plenty of people, as always, that you need to thank. Who do you need to send the shout-outs to for making it possible?
I guess the Q Cup guys again this time. We've been doing a lot of practicing, help, a lot of help with the spotting and everything. Josh Vieira from the pro class is spotting for me, and I'll spot for him in his race. So hopefully later on tonight we can have another double.
We'll keep our eyes peeled to see if you can pull it off. But at this time, Ian, we'll say congratulations on behalf of the Porsche Club of America and Podium Esports. Thanks as always for the time. We'll see you next Friday night from Daytona.
Yep. Thanks a lot, guys.
There's Ian Simon to complete coverage of the challenge class presented by Haggerty. And if you're on YouTube, it's that time to come out of full screen, go down to the bottom left, hit the blue PCA Sim Racing button, go back to the main channel, switch over to the sport video presented by Leland West. Rest insured. That is our second race on tap this evening, and it will come to you from the virtual Suzuka circuit in just a few moments. Podium Esports continues coverage of PCA Sim Racing Series 5, Round 7 from Suzuka.